Welcome to part 3 of our tutorial series. Today we're going to make some key changes to our GraphQL server. Our focus will be on connecting it to a MongoDB database, a crucial step in enabling our server to interact with dynamic data. This integration will lay the foundation for more advanced features and capabilities in our application. So, let's dive in and get our GraphQL server connected to MongoDB. Now let's start by installing the MongoDB Node.js package. This package will allow our GraphQL server to communicate with a MongoDB database. It's an essential step in integrating database functionality into our application. Open the terminal in your project's directory and run the following command: npm install MongoDB. This command will initiate the download and installation of the MongoDB package, seamlessly integrating it with your project. As part of the process, it will also be added as a dependency in your package.json file. Now that we have MongoDB installed, our next step is to create a dedicated file for managing our MongoDB operations. This file will be called mongo.ts, and it will serve as the central place for our MongoDB connection and handling logic. Next, let's create a new file named mongo.ts inside the src folder of our project. This file will play a pivotal role in our application. It's in mongo.ts that will establish our connection to the MongoDB database. We'll be organizing functions for connecting to, disconnecting from, and managing the database within this file. Having a dedicated file for these operations aligns with a modular approach, enabling us to centrally manage our database interactions efficiently and cleanly. First off, we import the Mongo client class from the MongoDB package. The Mongo client class is what we'll use to connect our application to a MongoDB database. Next up is setting our database's connection string, also known as the URI. This string points our application to the MongoDB server, which in this case is running locally on port 27017. Moving on, we create a new Mongo client instance. The client instance created here will manage all our interactions with the MongoDB database. Then we have a variable named dbConnection. Initially it's undefined, but it will eventually hold our active database connection. Now let's talk about the connect-to-database function. It's an asynchronous function that manages our database connection. Being asynchronous is important because database connections take time, and we don't want to block other operations. Inside this function, we first check if we already have a DB connection. If it's there, we just use it. Otherwise, we connect to the database with await client.connect. Once we're connected, DB connection is set to client.b profile, where a profile is the name of your database. Also, there's a try-catch block in there to handle any errors that might occur while connecting. Let's move on to updating our typedefs.ts file. We're enhancing it to align with our MongoDB integration. This includes introducing a new data type and adding functionalities to interact with user data stored in our database. In the typedefs.ts file, we're adding a new GraphQL type named user. The user type will represent our user data structure, which includes fields like ID and name. The ID field uses the GraphQL ID type, signifying a unique identifier. The name field is a simple string. Along with this new type, we're incorporating a new query called getUsers. This query will be defined under the query type and will return an array of user objects. It's designed to fetch a list of users from our database. We're also adding a new mutation named addUser within the mutation type. This mutation will take name as an argument and return a user object. It's tailored to add new user records to our MongoDB database. The updated typedefs.ts should now reflect these new structures and functionalities. By extending our type definitions in this way, our GraphQL server gains the ability to handle user-related requests, enabling operations like retrieving and adding user data to the database. It's crucial to ensure that typedefs is properly exported, as these definitions are key to our resolvers functionality. We're now updating our resolvers.ts file to include functionalities that interact with our MongoDB database. This involves adding two key functions: getUsers for our query and addUser for our mutation. These will enable us to fetch and add user data to our database. Firstly, we'll tackle the getUsers query within the query object. It's an asynchronous function, essential for handling database operations that don't return results immediately. The function's job is to retrieve all users from our database. We achieve this by first connecting to the database using our connect to database function. Once the connection is established, we use the find method on the users collection to retrieve all users. The result is then converted into an array. Next, we add the addUser mutation within the mutation object. Like getUsers, this is also asynchronous due to its interaction with the database. The addUser function takes a name as an argument, representing the new user's name. Inside the function, we connect to the database and use the insert1 method on the users collection to add the new user. Finally, the function returns an object containing this new user's ID and name. With these new additions to our resolvers.tar.js file, our GraphQL server gains the ability to perform crucial database operations. It's a significant step towards making our server not just interactive but also capable of handling real-world data management tasks. Now that we've updated our MongoDB typedefs.ts and resolvers.ts files, it's time to compile and run our server to see these changes come to life. Let's start by compiling our TypeScript code into JavaScript, and then we'll launch the server. Open up the terminal within your project's directory. We're going to run a couple of commands here. Start with npm run compile. This command tells the TypeScript compiler to convert our TypeScript files into JavaScript. It's a necessary step to ensure our server runs correctly. Wait for the compilation to complete before moving on to the next step. Once the compilation is done, it's time to start our server. Type in npm start and hit enter. This will boot up our GraphQL server. Keep an eye on the terminal for a confirmation message that the server is running. Now let's test out our GraphQL server. Open your favorite web browser and navigate to the GraphQL playground at localhost 4000. The GraphQL playground is an excellent tool for executing and testing GraphQL queries and mutations in a user-friendly interface. In the GraphQL playground, let's write a query to test the getUsers functionality we just implemented. Once you've entered the query, execute it by clicking the play button or pressing Ctrl+Enter. After running the query, take a look at the results pane. If everything is set up correctly, you should see data from your MongoDB database, a list of users, each with an ID and a name. This confirms that our server is effectively connected to MongoDB and can retrieve data. Now, let's move on to adding a new user using the mutation query. We'll add a user named Bob. In the GraphQL playground, go ahead and type in the mutation query to add Bob. Once you execute it, you should see a response from the server. This response will include the new ID generated for Bob and his name. It's a clear indication that our server is fully operational with MongoDB, capable of not only fetching but also inserting new data into the database. And that's a wrap on today's tutorial. A big thank you to everyone who joined us. We've made some great progress by integrating MongoDB with our GraphQL server, and it's all thanks to your commitment to learning and improving. If you enjoyed this tutorial and found it useful, please give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments section. Your input is highly appreciated and helps guide our future content. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to stay updated on our latest tutorials. Your subscription is a huge support to us, and it ensures you won't miss out on any new learning material.